Now, Todd Blanche has had a somewhat unusual path to become the nominee for Attorney General. He was, you'll remember, the president's personal defense attorney and represented him in multiple cases, including the New York hush money criminal trial. And while he tried to distance himself from some of the president's more controversial policies, he was involved with the prosecution of the president's political enemies, the so-called anti-weaponization fund that you just heard Evan discuss there. Gene Rossi formerly served as an assistant U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, and he joins me now. You would know the letter of the law and the way the conduct should go from here. From what you saw of the hearing, was he forthcoming enough to assure senators that, and I'm reading this from the Attorney General's obligations under law now, that this is a duty to the public interest rather than to executive agencies?
Well, Paula, I'm going to just make a global comment and then get to my prediction, my prognostication. The thing that troubles me most about Mr. Blanche, Acting Attorney General Blanche, is that he sort of had a Freudian slip. He was the personal attorney, criminal defense attorney for President Trump. And in his role as Deputy Attorney General, as Acting Attorney General, my concern is what Senator Schiff brought up, is that he hasn't shown fidelity to conflicts of interest, either actual conflicts or the appearance of impropriety. And when I worked for the Justice Department for almost 30 years, I was taught, ingrained as a prosecutor, you have to be purer than Caesar's wife, and he has not been that. He's engaged in indictments, the Seashell indictment, 8647 against Jim Comey. That indictment is pathetic, and he approved that. So that's my global comment: is you have an attorney general acting who, and I'll get to my prediction in a moment, who is not showing fidelity to that wall, the traditional wall between the president and the Department of Justice. We're almost going back to Nixon. Now, here's my prognostication. Overall, in terms of a performance scale, I thought I'd give him a B+ or an A-. And the reason is this: he kept his cool. He didn't engage. A couple times he got testy, but he didn't do what Pam Bondi did a few months ago, where she had a binder, and anytime a Democratic senator would ask her a question, she wouldn't ask her to answer the question. She'd come back with a zinger and was very disrespectful to the panel. He was respectful as much as he could be, and I think he didn't do any damage to his ability to get confirmed. So I think there's probably a 70 or 80% chance he will be confirmed as the permanent Senate confirmed Attorney General.
Right, and we will see the reaction of the Epstein victims to that. And I think from what we know from our sources on the Hill as well, your prognostication, as you say, is likely right. I do want to bring up something, and again, I know nothing about the law. I am not a lawyer. To me, the bar that you just set for the Attorney General seems quite low. In this hearing, in fact,
yes,
they asked him, what's your relationship with the president? And in a flub, he said, I'm his lawyer, and then had to correct himself to say, oh, no, I was his lawyer. So here's my question, because it's a question I ask everyone who comes on the program talking about this, because it's not about whether you're Democratic or Republican. It's about whether, would you be comfortable with a President Newsom, President Shapiro, President Ocasio-Cortez, President Booker having their personal lawyer become the Attorney General?
No. And for the
but
reasons,
that's what's happening
Paula,
here, Gene.
You're probably... No, Paula, believe me, I do not support his confirmation. I'm just saying he will be confirmed. I think it's horrible.
Okay, yeah. But why aren't more Republicans speaking out about this, Gene? I mean, they obviously realize that, when and if there's a Democratic president, that it could go against them. And a lot of those Republicans are lawyers. They're lawyers.
I think John Ossoff said it best yesterday, that there's probably not one Republican senator who is not disgusted with the conduct of President Trump for various reasons. And even though, Paula, this is what bothers me, even though these Republican senators, most of them, enough to get a confirmation, they're going to vote to confirm him. They do not like that the personal lawyer of the president, who does not have any wall between him and the president, is going to be the attorney general. Merrick Garland is looking better and better. He had no relationship with Joe Biden, and you can say all you want about Joe Biden, but Merrick Garland, a former judge for many years, there was a wall between him and Joe Biden. You can guarantee that. He allowed the indictment of Joe Biden's son. You can't be more impartial than that. So Merrick Garland, to me, is looking better and better.
I'm not, Gene, we do have to leave it there. I am not sure he is going to look that good to whatever future Democratic president there is in office, whether it's the next presidential election or several to come. As I said, I think this is new territory, and some people are going to fight for, yeah, perhaps someone who doesn't have quite a wall, maybe a screen between the executive branch and the AG. Gene Rossi, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.